So this is my ham shack. No big deal to me. I started as a ham in 2006, and the ham shack is actually just a desk in my sunroom. It's located between the area where my wife does sewing and we have brunch, and also a place to sit down in the sunroom. There's a sunroom, nice place to be. There's the daffodil center and sewing area, and there's my shack. You see, I have 3 monitors there. I just don't. They're all recovered from past systems, so nothing matches. They're all kind of scattywampus in there. But every time I lose a monitor system or have a spare monitor, I try to incorporate it into the ham shack, but that will soon change. The bench, let's see here. Yeah, I built the shack bench to fit the equipment I had at the time and the space I had available. And I added on a shelf and a few things. And over the years, I've had to take it apart, put it back together. It's in pretty bad shape right now, but I mean, it does the job. But that was one of my first fun projects, building some kind of furniture stuff. Jack recently redid his shack, and he put his desk on casters. And that's one of the best things I've done with my shack, too. So thanks, Jack. The whole thing was that there's not enough room behind it, and it's a very narrow area. So with this technique, I'm able to pull the ham shack completely out away from the wall to work on connections in the back. A great improvement. On the right-hand side of my ham shack bench is where I keep the power supplies going. The top shelf there, you see the UPS for the computer. Down below is my 45 amp power supply, 12 volt power supply. It has a DC adjust output, so I can make sure that after I go through all the various connections and fuses and diodes that I have 13.8 volts at the transceivers. The very bottom shelf is my homemade battery charging switchover system. I had the parts, I did it, and that's again. And you see below there, finally, with the plate with the wheel for mobility. On the right-hand side of the desk is my so-called HF area, and here's my center of that is the Icom 7300. And yeah, what a great radio. I use a 1 kilowatt amplifier with a 1 kilowatt auto tuner when I need it. And hopefully as the sunspots start coming back, I'll need that less and less, but it does make for good communications. In essence, if I can hear the station, I can work them. This, I'm using 2 antennas, and for each antenna, there's an output from the tuner that goes through these RF sensors of Larry Post LP-100. And those, that way I can see the actual real power going to the antennas after the tuner. So instead of seeing what the tuner has let the transceiver see, I see the actual SWR and power going to the antennas, and sometimes it's quite shocking. It's quite amazing how badly the antenna really looks, and yet I'm still working the world. There's the head unit for the LP100 vector watt meter. It automatically senses which of the 2 outputs is running, and will show the power for that. If you have the wherewithal, I really recommend the LP-100A. It's NTSC or whatever calibrated. It's a little pricey, $500 I think for a simple system, but it really shows you the true deal. Okay, so here's the whole HF area. I use a pair of Motorola speakers centered around my sitting position, so I can have pseudo stereo when I need it. And those Motorola speakers have been the best for me, but they're all pretty good these days. So, oh look, I got a mouse. From the transceiver, I go to this regular watt meter, Daiwa watt meter. Then I go to the power amplifier. Then I go to the tuner, pick up the tuner's outputs, and then I go to the antenna. What this watt meter does is shows me that, yeah, I've actually got signal out of my 7300 and making sure that this device is working properly and not bypassed. So I'm seeing 1-to-1, very low SWR over here to make sure that's all okay. Okay. So here's a representation of that, what I just said. The transceiver, analog watt meter, 1 kilowatt amplifier, tuner, transducers, and a dipole G5RV that I've had up since 2006, and a big IR that's not much younger. That's the dipole, that's a vertical. Now this is another interesting, I thought I'd throw this out real quick. Power is easy as pie, thanks Tim. And the whole thing is that if I have a 50 ohm dummy load, the vector watt meter and the Daiwa watt meter show the same power out, 10 watts. But let's say that I have the Daiwa watt meter last in line and my load is actually 200 ohms. The Daiwa watt meter uses diode detectors to guess what the actual power is based on its supposed 500 ohm load. Well, if that load is not 500 ohms, then you're not getting the true story here. P equals I over E. I can be significantly different at nodes and anti-nodes in a SIPS area, in an antenna system that has high SWR. So here you're sitting there, 10 watts coming out. My vector watt meter in this location says 10 watts. Of course, it's going to a tuner. But after the tuner, between the 200 ohm antenna, my watt meter is saying 14 watts, which is clearly impossible. But that's one defect of that kind of watt meter that is overcome by the vector watt meter. Reversing these two watt meters, I see, again, into 200 ohms, the digital vector watt meter will say, yes, you've got 10 ohms. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. I think I'm moving my arrows in the wrong place. Over to the right is a stack of device equipment I'm not using right now. Down here is a Henry 2K power amplifier tube type, big old guy, big old heavy power supply, high voltage stuff. Here is a manual tuner I bought from RJ for a really good price, and does everything I need for RF bench experiments, although I'm still building a couple of manual tuners. This one's already built and works great. And here's my portable 7300 system. There's my 7300 with a auto tuner, and again, an output meter showing what I think is output, but it's an analog meter without current sense, so it doesn't show me real power out. Again, a close-up of that. There's the big old Henry with his beautiful meters. It's got tubes in there. They light up. They get hot. The VersaTuner, MFJ VersaTuner, with its traditional 2 capacitors, 1 inductor setup. And here's my portable rig. The left side of my shack holds my new Icom 9700. This is the UHF VHF part of my shack. And I have lighted meters for both the UHF and VHF outputs from the 9700. Here's a little box up here. I do this with all the rigs I get in general, is they have a multi-conductor output jack on the back for things like injecting audio. You know, you can pick up power. So I take the power out of this, put it through a relay, power out of the 9700, put it through a relay and use it to turn on the lights. I push one button and everything turns on. So that's pretty much fun. That is the UHF VHF side. Here's a close-up of that. Another excellent radio from Icom. And there's my little breakout box. Here's how I handle the antennas for that. I have a pair of satellite antennas. They're called the egg beaters. And they each have their own individual coax. And then I have the dual band vertical, the Comet 800 or whatever that was, the famous one for WCARES now. And that only has one cable for both the UHF and VHF. So I have to go through a duplexer to split that into UHF and VHF for the Icom 9700 transceiver. And so I used a switch, a pair of switches actually, with center off. When the center's off, they're all grounded. And then I click this one up there and that one up there if I want the satellite antenna. And I click this one down here and this one down there if I'm just doing terrestrial. Those are the switches. These are Delta. I forgot the Alpha Delta switches. And they turn out to be very, very good. But all these switches, they're just pieces of copper, spring copper. You need to watch out for them and make sure they work. That's why I like to have a lot of meters in place. Well, that demonstration, that presentation we had last month about grounding and other things in the past have caused me to want to change all of my ground strap. I was using that braid to pure copper strap. This is from Georgia Copper, and it's relatively expensive. Obviously, it's a metal, but not terribly expensive. And Georgia Copper has all kinds of sizes. So one day I got crazy and took out all the other ground bars I had in the back and just put a copper strip along the back of my bench. And then, being silly, I put copper strips from the ground strap to each of my units there. So it's not very bendy. It works. You can slide it out an inch or two, but this could actually have been left as braided cable, and I'll probably revert to that in the near future. And here's the cable going up to the back of my computer. Everything in the shack, everything on the bench gets a ground cable except for things like speakers and the like. This strap here, the strap is conducted to an outside grounding system by means of this strap. And I have 4 thumb screws that I use to tighten it down onto this strap. I'm not so sure if this is a good way of doing this, but that's the way I did. And I used a thing called Copper Coat, Copper Shield, KOPR-SHIELD, to actually coat the mating surfaces to promote conductivity. And this cable goes right out through a slit in the wall and right out to my ground rods. I'm not going to show the ground rods in my grounding system right now. I'll do that in a follow-up, because right now you see a lot of braid here. I'm changing all this braid from my antenna discharge units, changing all this to copper strap. That'll be for another installment. Here's how you put copper strap to your ground posts, ground rods. It's a very simple way to just squeeze it and mesh it in there. And again, I use, let's see here. You can get that copper strap system from DX Engineering as well as Georgia Copper. But I use this stuff, Copper Shield, and that keeps the contacts from getting depreciating over the years. One thing that we were told by Dr. Bates about the lightning arresting and philosophies is maintenance. Always do maintenance, clean these connections. If you use this Thomas and Betts Copper Shield, your ground connections will not need much maintenance at all. Well, I am planning on replacing old braid with copper strap. And, I have a little friend to help me do that. Okay, here we go. You can see he's out here looking for copper braid that there's some right there. He's just going to chew right through that. And that's my little helper in the shack. He doesn't have a name yet, but he does not like he's looking forward to copper strap. He does not like the copper braid one bit. Okay, go on. You're done now. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
And there he goes. He's back to see what else is around. Okay. Well, and there, of course, is AL1EN, which unfortunately is an actual valid ARRL FCC call sign. So I've got to find a new name for him. But you've seen him at many of the field days we've had. He's ready to go for the next one, wherever it is. And in fact, he's got his field day pin. Well, fortunately, that's it. Are there any questions?